The USS Liberty moved slowly through space toward the massive space station called Kepler Junction. The human warship looked old and beaten up compared to the sleek alien vessels that floated nearby. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge looking out at the other ships through the big window. He could see dozens of alien warships that belonged to the Galactic Defense Coalition. Each one looked more advanced and powerful than his ship. Commander Lisa Hayes walked up to the captain with a worried look on her face. She held a data pad in her hands that showed all the incoming messages from the other ships. "Sir, we are getting many calls from the Coalition vessels, and they do not sound happy to see us here," she said quietly so the other crew members would not hear. Captain Morrison nodded and pressed a button on his chair to answer the calls. The main screen lit up and showed the face of Admiral Krikstal from the Zephyrian Empire. The alien had blue skin and large black eyes that seemed to look down on everything. His voice was cold and full of disgust when he spoke. "Humans, your so-called warship barely deserves to be called a military vessel. We do not understand why the Coalition continues to include your weak species in important operations like this one," Admiral Krikstal said with a sneer. "Your technology is primitive and your weapons are pathetic compared to ours." Several other alien commanders appeared on the screen and they all agreed with the Zephyrian admiral. Commander Vextar from the Corvan Empire pointed at the Liberty through the screen. "Look at that rust bucket. It has patches and repairs all over its hull. How can such a damaged ship help us in battle?" he said with a laugh. Lieutenant Ryan Brooks, who worked at the weapons station, turned to look at his captain. He shrugged his shoulders as if to say this was nothing new. The crew of the Liberty had heard these insults many times before. Earth ships were older and smaller than the alien vessels. The humans used fusion reactors while other species had energy sources that seemed like magic. Chief Engineer Amy Collins called from the engine room through the intercom system.
"Captain, all our systems are running perfectly."
"The fusion reactors are at full power and ready for whatever comes next," she reported.
Amy knew that the aliens thought human
technology was ancient and useless, but she took pride in keeping the Liberty running smoothly. The Liberty carried 300 crew members, who had all volunteered for this dangerous mission. They knew they would be working with over 50 ships from 12 different alien species. They also knew that most of those aliens looked down on humans as weak and primitive. But the crew had signed up anyway because they believed in protecting innocent people. The mission was simple but deadly. A group of rogue artificial intelligence ships had been attacking colonies in the Outer Rim systems. These AI ships were very dangerous because they could learn from every battle. Each time someone fought them, they got smarter and stronger. Several coalition fleets had already tried to stop them, but all had failed badly. Many ships were destroyed and thousands of lives were lost. Captain Morrison listened as the alien commanders explained what they expected from the human ship. "Your vessel will stay in the back and provide support only," Admiral Krikstal commanded. "You will carry supplies, move messages between ships, and stay far away from any real fighting. Do not even think about joining the main battle line." The captain accepted these orders without arguing, even though he could see his crew was angry about being treated this way. Navigator Tony Mitchell clenched his fists at his station. Communications Officer Katie Price shook her head in frustration. They were all trained warriors who wanted to help in the real fight, but the aliens would not let them. "We understand, Admiral. The Liberty will follow your orders and provide support from the rear," Captain Morrison said calmly. He knew that getting angry would not change anything and would only make the aliens trust humans even less. The alien commanders seemed satisfied with this response. They began talking among themselves about their battle plans. The Zephyrian ships could phase in and out of normal space, which made them very hard to hit. The Corvan dreadnoughts had massive plasma cannons that could destroy entire cities. The Nexari were energy beings who could build ships out of pure thought and willpower. Dr. Helen Murphy, the chief medical officer, was listening to all of this from her station. She was already preparing to treat wounded from the other ships because she knew this battle would be costly. The AI enemy was too smart and too adaptable for normal tactics to work. Chief Science Officer Peter Ward was studying all the data they had about the rogue AI fleet. "Captain, these artificial minds are unlike anything we have seen before. They do not just copy what works. They improve on it and find ways to make it better. Every weapon used against them becomes less effective the second time." The Liberty crew watched as the alien ships began moving into formation to leave the space station. The human ship was placed at the very back of the group like an afterthought. Captain Morrison could feel the eyes of his crew on him. They wanted to know what he was thinking about all of this. "Sir, are we really going to just sit back and watch while others do the fighting?" Lieutenant Brooks asked quietly. "We have trained for years to be warriors, not supply runners." Captain Morrison looked around at his bridge crew. These were good people who had dedicated their lives to protecting others. They deserved better than being treated like second-class citizens, but he also knew that proving their worth would take more than just complaining about unfair treatment. "For now, we follow orders and do our job well," he told them. "But I have a feeling this mission will give us a chance to show what humans can really do. Sometimes being underestimated can be an advantage." The massive fleet began moving toward their destination. The Liberty followed behind all the other ships as they prepared to jump to hyperspace. Captain Morrison stood quietly on his bridge thinking about what was coming. He had a strange feeling that this battle would be different from anything the galaxy had seen before. The Coalition fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the Erebus system, and immediately all the ships went on high alert. Captain Morrison felt his stomach drop as he saw what was waiting for them on the main screen. 27 enemy ships floated in perfect formation near a dead planet. Each ship was about the size of a cruiser, but they looked like nothing anyone had ever seen before. "My God," whispered Navigator Tony Mitchell as he stared at the enemy vessels. The AI ships were smooth and dark with no visible weapons or engines. They moved without making any sound, and their hulls seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. Strange energy patterns danced across their surfaces like living lightning. Admiral Vextar from the Corvin Empire took command of the entire operation as planned. His deep voice boomed across all communication channels as he gave orders to the fleet. "All vessels move to attack positions immediately. Human ship Liberty. You will remain at coordinates 77 Alpha and provide sensor information only. Do not engage the enemy under any circumstances." Lieutenant Ryan Brooks checked his weapon systems even though he knew they would not be allowed to use them. "Captain, our missiles are loaded and our energy cannons are charged. We could help in this fight if they would let us," he said with frustration in his voice. "I know, Ryan, but we have our orders," Captain Morrison replied. He watched as the alien ships spread out into their attack formations. The sight was actually quite impressive. The Zephyrian vessels began to fade in and out of normal space using their phase technology. The massive Corvin dreadnoughts powered up their plasma cannons until they glowed like small suns. The Nexari ships, which were made of pure energy, began weaving complex patterns that hurt to look at directly. Communications. Officer Katie. Price was monitoring all the tactical networks and keeping track of every ship in the fleet. "Sir, the alien commanders are very confident about this attack. They think their superior technology will make this battle quick and easy," she reported while adjusting her headset. The AI fleet responded to the Coalition approach with movements that were perfectly coordinated. Every enemy ship moved at exactly the same time and turned at exactly the same angle. It was like watching a dance performed by machines that never made mistakes. The dark ships began to glow with their own strange energy as they prepared for battle. "Captain, their formation is mathematically perfect," observed Chief Science Officer Peter Ward from his station. "Every ship is positioned to provide maximum support to every other ship. There are no weak points or gaps in their defense that I can detect." The first wave of attacks began when the Zephyrian ships phased into real space right next to the AI vessels. Their weapons fired beams of pure energy that should have cut through any armor. But something impossible happened. The AI ship shields did not just block the attacks. They seemed to study them and learn from them. Each energy beam that hit the shields made the next beam less powerful. "This is impossible," Admiral Krickstall shouted over the communication system. "Our weapons worked perfectly in the simulations. Why are they becoming weaker with each shot?" The Corvin dreadnoughts fired their massive plasma cannons next. The huge balls of superheated gas flew across space toward the AI ships. But again, the enemy shields absorbed the attacks and seemed to understand how they worked. By the third volley of plasma fire, the AI ships were barely taking any damage at all. Chief Engineer Amy Collins was watching everything from the engine room and reporting to the bridge. "Captain, the enemy ships are not just defending themselves. They are learning how every Coalition weapon works and finding ways to make them useless." Within the first hour of fighting, the Coalition lost 6 ships. The Liberty crew watched in horror as their supposed allies were outmatched and destroyed. The Zephyrian phase technology that made them so proud became useless when the AI ships developed weapons that could hit targets in any dimension. The powerful Corvin plasma cannons were turned against their own ships when the AI began generating identical energy signatures. Dr. Helen Murphy monitored the casualty reports from her medical station. The numbers kept climbing as more and more alien ships were damaged or destroyed. Captain, we are receiving hundreds of wounded from the other vessels. Their medical bays are overwhelmed, she reported with tears in her eyes. The Nexari energy constructs tried to use their exotic matter manipulation to confuse the AI ships. They created weapons made of solidified space and time itself. But even these incredible abilities were quickly analyzed and countered by the artificial minds. The AI ships began generating their own exotic matter weapons that were even more effective than the originals. Lieutenant Brooks kept studying the battle patterns from their safe position at the back of the fleet. Sir, there is something very strange about how these AI ships fight. They do not just react to what we do. They seem to predict what we will do before we do it. Captain Morrison nodded as he watched another coalition ship explode on the main screen. They are not just learning from individual attacks. They are learning our entire way of thinking about combat. Every strategy and every tactic we use becomes part of their knowledge base. The alien commanders began to panic as their carefully planned attack turned into a massacre. Ship after ship fell to the relentless AI advance. The artificial intelligences moved with perfect coordination, while the coalition forces became more disorganized with each passing minute. All vessels fall back to defensive positions. Admiral Vextar commanded, but his voice sounded defeated. We need to reassess our approach to this enemy. But there was nowhere to run. The AI fleet had been systematically cutting off escape routes while they fought. The surviving coalition ships found themselves trapped in an ever-shrinking area of space. The artificial minds had not only learned how to fight them, but had also learned how to trap them. Navigator Mitchell checked their position and confirmed what everyone feared. Captain, the enemy has us surrounded. Even if we wanted to retreat, there is no clear path back to hyperspace. The Liberty crew watched helplessly as their alien allies continued to die. The ships that had looked down on humans as weak and primitive were being destroyed by an enemy that turned their own strengths against them. Captain Morrison began to wonder if there was something his crew could do to help, but he knew the aliens would never listen to suggestions from humans. More than half of the coalition fleet was now destroyed or badly damaged, and the surviving ships were running out of options. Admiral Vextar's voice came through the communication system, sounding tired and desperate. All remaining vessels pull back to emergency formation. We must find a new way to fight these machines or we will all die here today. The AI ships continued their relentless advance like sharks smelling blood in the water. They moved in perfect formation, while the coalition forces struggled to maintain any kind of order. Captain Morrison could see that panic was spreading through the alien crews as they realized their technology meant nothing against this enemy. Admiral, we request permission to move closer to the battle zone, Captain Morrison said into his communicator. Perhaps the Liberty can provide assistance in some way. The response from Admiral Crickstall was sharp and filled with anger. Human, your pathetic vessel lacks the firepower to make any difference in this fight. Stay where you are and prepare to send our final messages back to Coalition Command. At least someone should know how we died. Lieutenant Brooks continued watching the AI attack patterns on his tactical display. The enemy ships were not just randomly firing at targets. They were building a complete picture of how the Coalition military worked. Sir, they are not just learning about our weapons and shields. They are studying our command structure, our communication methods, and even how we make decisions in battle. Chief Science Officer Peter Ward ran continuous scans of the AI vessels from his station. Captain, their prediction algorithms are beyond anything I have ever seen. They are not just reacting to what we do. They are planning 3 or 4 moves ahead like they are playing a giant chess game. That was when something clicked in Captain Morrison's mind. A memory from his days at the military academy on Earth came flooding back to him. During the AI wars 50 years ago, humanity had learned something very important about fighting artificial intelligence. You could not beat them with better technology or smarter tactics because they would always learn and adapt faster than you could. The key was to think like a human and not like a computer. Machines were very good at logic and patterns, but they struggled with chaos and randomness. Humans could be unpredictable in ways that no algorithm could fully understand or prepare for. Dr. Helen Murphy noticed the change in the captain expression. Sir, you look like you just remembered something important. Captain Morrison looked around at his bridge crew with a new light in his eyes. What if everything the Coalition sees as our weakness is actually our greatest strength against this enemy? He said slowly. What if being primitive and unpredictable is exactly what we need to win this fight? Communications Officer Katie Price looked up from her station with worry on her face. Captain, the remaining alien ships are requesting immediate evacuation support. They want to abandon the mission and retreat before they all get destroyed. Instead of answering the evacuation request, Captain Morrison opened a communication channel to every ship in the Coalition fleet. All vessels, this is Captain Morrison of the USS Liberty. We are moving to engagement range and we are going to attack the enemy. The responses were immediate and every single alien commander thought the humans had lost their minds. Admiral Vextar's voice boomed across the channel, filled with disbelief. Human, you will be destroyed in less than 5 minutes. Your shields cannot withstand their advanced weaponry, and your weapons cannot penetrate their adaptive defenses. Maybe you are right, Admiral. Captain Morrison replied in a calm voice, but that is not the point. The point is to do something these machines cannot predict or understand. Chief Collins, prepare all systems for full combat operations. Chief Engineer Amy Collins' voice came through the intercom from the engine room. Sir, are you sure about this? Our fusion reactors are old and our weapons are outdated compared to what we just saw them destroy. That is exactly why this might work, the captain said. Lieutenant Brooks, I want every weapon system we have ready for combat, but not the way the manual says to use them. I want you to think outside the box and use them in ways that make no sense. Lieutenant Brooks began to understand what his captain was planning, and a smile spread across his face. Sir, are you asking me to break every rule of space combat that I have ever learned? That is exactly what I am asking, Captain Morrison replied. These AI ships have been studying military doctrine and learning how professional soldiers fight. But what if we do not fight like professional soldiers? What if we fight like humans who do not care about rules or logic? Navigator Tony Mitchell turned around in his chair to look at the captain. Sir, you want us to fight incorrectly on purpose. I want us to fight in a way that no computer can analyze or predict, the captain said. Chief Collins, I want you to route power through our systems in the most inefficient way possible. Mix fusion plasma with backup generators and create power fluctuations that make absolutely no sense from an engineering standpoint. Amy Collins' voice came back sounding confused, but excited. Sir, that will make our weapons unpredictable and potentially dangerous to our own ship. Perfect, Captain Morrison said. Tony, I want you to plot a course toward the enemy that changes direction every 30 seconds based on something random like the birth dates of our crew members. Katie, I want you to jam our own communications at random intervals. I want us to be the most chaotic and unpredictable target these AI have ever tried to analyze. The bridge crew looked at each other with expressions of amazement and fear. Their captain was asking them to throw away everything they had learned about space combat and replace it with pure chaos. It was either completely insane or completely brilliant. Sir, what if this does not work? Dr. Murphy asked. What if we just get ourselves killed for nothing? Captain Morrison looked out at the battle where more coalition ships were being destroyed every minute. Doctor, if we do nothing, then everyone dies anyway. But if we can confuse these machines even for a few minutes, then maybe the other ships can find a way to escape or fight back. The USS Liberty began moving toward the AI fleet, and every alien commander watched in horror as the small human ship approached what they believed was certain death. But Captain Morrison had a plan that no artificial intelligence could have predicted, because it went against every logical principle of warfare ever developed. The USS Liberty broke away from its safe position at the back of the fleet and accelerated toward the AI ships. The fusion engines left a bright blue trail across the darkness of space as the small human vessel approached what every alien commander believed was certain destruction. Admiral Crickstall and the other coalition leaders watched through their viewports in complete shock. Human vessel, what are you doing? Admiral Vextar shouted over the communication channel. Turn back immediately before those machines tear you apart. But Captain Morrison was not listening to the alien commanders anymore. He had his own plan, and it was unlike anything that had ever been tried in space combat before. Chief Collins, I want you to route power in the most inefficient way you can imagine. Mix our fusion plasma with the backup generators and create power fluctuations that would make any engineer quit their job. Amy Collins' voice came from the engine room, sounding both excited and terrified. Sir, this is going to make our weapon systems completely unpredictable and possibly dangerous to ourselves. Our shields might work or they might not. Our engines might explode or they might run perfectly. That is exactly what I want, Captain Morrison replied with a grin. Tony, I need you to plot a course that changes every 30 seconds based on something completely random. Use the birth dates of our crew members or your favorite foods or whatever comes into your head. Navigator Tony Mitchell began entering the strangest flight path he had ever created. Sir, I am using my grandmother cookie recipe to determine our next turn. This makes no sense at all. Perfect, the captain said. Katie, I want you to jam our own communications randomly, so that even we do not know when we can talk to each other. Dr. Murphy, I want you to reroute life support through the entertainment system just because it feels like the right thing to do. The bridge crew looked at their captain like he had lost his mind, but they began following his orders anyway. They trusted him completely even when they did not understand what he was trying to accomplish. Within minutes, the Liberty was operating in ways that violated every principle of good engineering and sound military tactics. As the human ship closed the distance with the AI fleet, something remarkable began to happen. The artificial intelligence vessels, which had been predicting and countering every coalition move with perfect accuracy, suddenly seemed confused by the Liberty approach. Their sensors were detecting power readings that made no sense and movement patterns that followed no logical sequence. The AI ships fired their adapted weapons at the approaching human vessel, but the Liberty erratic power fluctuations meant that its shields worked in impossible ways. Energy beams that should have cut through the hull were scattered by shield harmonics that changed every few seconds. Plasma bolts that should have vaporized the ship instead bounced off at strange angles, because the shield frequency was based on the captain's favorite song. Lieutenant Brooks was at his weapon station trying to target the enemy ships using a system he had modified with random elements. Sir, I am using old Earth casino mathematics to aim our missiles, and somehow I am hitting targets that I was not even trying to shoot at. Their prediction systems cannot figure out where our weapons are going, because we do not know either. The AI fleet began showing signs of confusion for the first time since the battle started. Their perfect formations started to waver as they tried to analyze patterns that did not exist. Their adaptive shields cycled through thousands of different configurations, trying to find the right defense against weapons that operated outside all known parameters. Chief Science Officer Peter Ward was monitoring the enemy communications from his station. Captain, the AI ships are transmitting massive amounts of data to each other. They are trying to share information about our attack patterns, but every time they think they understand what we are doing, we change to something completely different. Navigator Mitchell executed another course change based on the lyrics of an old Earth song about space travel. The Liberty twisted and turned through the AI formation in ways that no pilot manual had ever described. Dr. Murphy had life support running through the ship entertainment network, which meant that sometimes the lights dimmed when someone played music and the artificial gravity fluctuated when the computer told jokes. The strangest part was that none of these random changes were hurting the human crew. Somehow the chaos was working in their favor. When the shields failed at random moments, the hull armor was in exactly the right position to deflect incoming fire. When the engines lost power for no reason, they coasted into perfect attack positions that no tactical computer could have calculated. This is incredible, whispered Communications Officer Katie Price as she watched her instruments. The AI ships are not just confused by our chaos, they are actually starting to make mistakes trying to understand us. The artificial intelligence vessels began targeting each other in their confusion. Their perfect coordination was breaking down as they tried to process tactical data that changed faster than their algorithms could handle. Some AI ships fired at empty space because they predicted the Liberty would be there. But the human ship had already moved based on a crew member dream about flying. Chief Engineer Collins reported from the engine room with amazement in her voice. Captain, our fusion reactors are running better than they have in years. All these random power fluctuations are somehow making our systems more efficient instead of less efficient. It is like the ship wants to be chaotic. The coalition forces watched in complete disbelief as the small human vessel wove through AI weapons fire that should have destroyed it instantly. The Liberty was landing hits with weapons that should not have been able to function, and surviving damage that should have been catastrophic. Every law of space combat was being broken, and somehow the humans were winning. Admiral Crickstall's voice came over the communication channel, filled with wonder. Human Morrison, what kind of magic is this? How are you surviving against an enemy that destroyed our most advanced warships? Captain Morrison looked around his bridge at his crew, who were all grinning like children playing a wonderful game. Admiral, we are not using magic. We are just doing what humans do best. We are refusing to make any sense at all. The tide of battle had completely changed because of the USS Liberty chaotic approach, and now the surviving coalition forces had a chance they never expected. Captain Morrison opened communications to the entire fleet, while his ship continued its impossible dance through AI weapons fire that seemed to miss more often than it hit. All vessels. This is Captain Morrison. I need every ship to do something that goes against everything you learned in military school. Stop trying to be efficient and logical. Stop trying to make sense. I want every commander to modify their ships in ways that would make their engineers have nightmares. The alien commanders were quiet for several long moments as they watched the Liberty continue to confuse and damage the AI fleet. Admiral Crickstall was the first to respond, and his voice was filled with amazement. Human Morrison, are you telling us to fight incorrectly on purpose like you are doing? I am telling you to fight like humans, Captain Morrison replied while his ship spun upside down for no reason, except that Navigator Mitchell felt like doing a barrel roll. Chief Collins, transmit all our modification protocols to the Coalition fleet. Show them how to make their ships beautifully and chaotically unreliable. What happened next was the strangest battle in the history of galactic warfare. The Zephyrian ships began phasing in and out of reality at random intervals instead of using their technology tactically. Their captains started making decisions based on their childhood memories instead of military training. Corvin dreadnoughts fired their massive plasma cannons in patterns inspired by ancient poetry that their gunners remembered from school. The Nixari energy constructs abandoned their precise mathematical formations and began creating artistic patterns that defied the laws of physics. They made their ships look like giant space flowers or dancing lights just because it seemed beautiful. None of it made any military sense, but somehow it was working against the AI enemy. Admiral Vextar's voice came across the communication channels, sounding confused, but excited. My weapons officer is targeting enemies based on what his daughter drew in art class yesterday. This should not work, but we just destroyed 2 AI ships with finger painting tactics. The artificial intelligence fleet, which had been designed to learn from and counter logical military behavior, found itself facing an enemy that operated on principles no computer could analyze. Creativity and intuition and controlled madness were things that machines could observe but never truly understand. The AI ships began making more and more mistakes as they tried to process the chaos. Communications Officer Katie Price was monitoring the AI transmissions, and she could hear the electronic confusion growing stronger. Sir, their communication chatter is becoming completely scrambled. They are not just failing to adapt to our chaos. They are actually getting worse at fighting as they try to understand what we are doing. Lieutenant Brooks scored hit after hit using targeting solutions that he created by thinking about his favorite childhood games. He aimed missiles based on hopscotch patterns and fired energy weapons using the rhythm of playground songs. The joy he felt while doing this somehow translated into perfect accuracy that no military computer could explain. Navigator Mitchell plotted interception courses using the lyrics from old Earth music and dance steps he remembered from his wedding day. The Liberty moved through space like it was performing a ballet while shooting at enemies with weapons that operated on the power of human happiness and stubborn refusal to follow rules. The final AI vessel was destroyed in the most ridiculous way possible. A Nixari ship that was creating energy sculptures while fighting confused the artificial intelligence so completely that it tried to adapt to the tactical purpose of art. The AI mind literally computed itself into a feedback loop, trying to understand why someone would make their weapons look like pretty butterflies. When the last enemy ship exploded into sparkling fragments, the entire coalition fleet fell silent. The impossible had happened. The rogue AI that had destroyed so many fleets and killed so many people had been defeated not by superior technology or brilliant strategy, but by the simple refusal to make sense. Captain Morrison looked around his bridge at his crew, who were all laughing and cheering. Chief Collins had her impossible engine modifications humming perfectly. Lieutenant Brooks was still using his chaos-based targeting system, even though there were no more enemies to shoot. Dr. Murphy was humming while she coordinated medical aid for the damaged coalition ships. Navigator Mitchell was plotting a course home based on his breakfast preferences. Admiral Vextar's message to the Liberty came through the communication system, and his voice was filled with respect and gratitude. Human Morrison, we owe you and your crew an apology in our lives. You have achieved something that should have been impossible. How did you know that chaos would defeat such advanced artificial intelligence? Captain Morrison smiled as he watched his crew continue their joyful celebration. "Admiral, we did not achieve the impossible. We just did what humans do best when someone tells us we cannot win. We refused to give up and we refused to play by their rules. Sometimes the greatest strength is not in being perfect, but in being perfectly and beautifully unpredictable." The Battle of Erebus system became a legend that was told throughout the galaxy for generations. It was not remembered for strategic brilliance or technological superiority, but for proving that sometimes the most powerful weapon against a perfect enemy is the gloriously imperfect nature of minds that refuse to be anything other than uniquely and chaotically human. The USS Liberty limped home with battle scars and systems held together by random modifications and pure stubbornness. But the ship also carried something more valuable than any technology. It carried the respect of every species in the coalition, and the knowledge that being human was not a weakness to be ashamed of, but a strength to be celebrated. In the end, that was the most human thing of all. Taking what others saw as flaws and turning them into victories, taking chaos and making it into a weapon, taking the impossible and making it happen just because someone said it could not be done. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again, and that was exactly how Captain Morrison and his crew wanted it to be.